morning sun rose quietly over Cary, North Carolina. Streets were still, yards were trimmed, and everything looked exactly the way it should in a peaceful suburban town. The kind of place where people wave to each other at stop signs, where nothing bad ever really happens, or at least nothing people talk about. But on July 12, 2008, that illusion shattered like glass. A woman, young, vibrant, full of life, vanished into thin air. Her name was Nancy Cooper, a devoted mother, a beloved friend, a wife, and by nightfall, she was a missing person. Brad Cooper stood in the driveway of his immaculate home, the kind with shutters that matched the mailbox. He wore a calm face, too calm, some said later. He told police his wife had gone out for a morning jog and never returned. That's all. No panic, no urgency, just a statement. But those who knew Nancy knew something was wrong. She never missed her Saturday routine. Coffee with friends, errands, the girls' soccer game. She wouldn't just vanish. Not like that. The cops asked Brad the usual questions. When did she leave? What was she wearing? Did she take her phone? He had answers. Too many, too neat. Nancy had left the house around 7 a.m., he said, wearing a jogging outfit. No phone, no ID. Just her usual route through the neighborhood. She jogged every day. Except that morning, nobody saw her. But it didn't take long for the mask to slip. Neighbors whispered, friends frowned. Behind closed doors, Nancy had been telling people things. About Brad, about her marriage, about what it was like behind the facade of their perfect suburban life. She told friends she was scared, that Brad was controlling, cold, that he tracked her movements, that he didn't want her to leave him, but didn't want to love her either. A strange, chilling kind of possessiveness. They had been living in the same house, but not together. Not really. Two separate lives, under one roof. Nancy wanted out. She'd made plans to leave him. She was even talking to lawyers. She wanted to take the kids, move back to Canada, start fresh. But then, she disappeared. 2 days later, her lifeless body was found near a storm drain, face down, partially clothed, her skin bruised, her fingernails broken, as if she'd fought, as if she had been thrown away like she didn't matter. But she mattered, to her daughters, to her parents, to everyone who saw the light in her smile. And someone had taken all that away. Brad cried on TV, just enough. He played the role of grieving husband, but his eyes were hollow, empty, like he was acting, or like he didn't care. And the deeper detectives dug, the darker the truth became. Why was Brad researching how to delete phone records days before she vanished? Why was there a Google Map printout of the exact location where Nancy's body was found on his laptop? Why did a man who claimed he was working from home have no real alibi for the hours she went missing? Everything started unraveling, slowly, quietly, like a puzzle losing shape. Friends who once nodded politely at Brad now watched him with suspicion. He wasn't just the husband anymore, he was the suspect. The town of Cary was no longer quiet. News trucks lined the streets. Reporters stood near playgrounds where children once laughed freely. The sidewalks where Nancy Cooper used to jog were now part of a crime scene. People wanted answers. The community was restless. But Brad Cooper, he remained distant, withdrawn, silent in a way that made your skin crawl. Detectives began to trace Nancy's final days. They pulled text messages, emails, phone records, and slowly, the picture became clearer. The marriage wasn't just strained, it was shattered. Brad wasn't just controlling, he was cold, calculated. He monitored Nancy's every move, tracked her phone, questioned her friends, even controlled her spending. She was a prisoner in her own home, a beautiful 2-story house with clean flower beds and a dying love inside. Nancy had tried to fight back. She'd confided in friends, told them she was preparing to leave. She wanted full custody of her children. She was finally done being afraid, but she never got the chance. Then came the Google Maps search. Investigators found it buried deep in Brad's computer cache. A satellite image, zoomed in, focused directly on the spot where Nancy's body was eventually discovered, 2 days before she vanished. When questioned, Brad said he didn't remember searching for it, said maybe it was an accident, just a click. But police weren't buying it. This wasn't a casual scroll. This was a specific, deliberate location. And Nancy's body had been found there, face down in the dirt, tossed aside like an afterthought. The medical examiner revealed something else. Nancy had marks around her neck, bruises, signs of strangulation, a slow, intimate kind of murder, one that takes time, one that suggests rage or familiarity. This wasn't a random attack. This was personal. Still, Brad insisted he was innocent, that he loved Nancy, that he had nothing to do with her death. He hired lawyers, fought custody battles, refused to move out of the house even after her death. And yet, as detectives continued to peel back the layers, more secrets emerged. Emails between Brad and another woman, a digital affair. Brad had been chatting with a woman from Canada just months before Nancy was killed. Late-night messages, hidden calls, romantic tones. It wasn't just a broken marriage, it was betrayal, lies, a secret life brewing behind closed doors while Nancy was trying to hold on for the sake of her daughters. And that was the final crack in the mirror. Brad didn't just want Nancy gone, he wanted freedom. But freedom didn't mean divorce. It meant silence. And now, Nancy was permanently silent. Police built their timeline, piece by piece. Brad claimed Nancy left at 7 a.m. for her jog. But there were no witnesses, no camera footage, no one who saw her running, not even once. Meanwhile, Brad said he stayed home with the kids, but phone records placed him in unusual locations that morning. Driving, moving, briefly disconnected from the home's Wi-Fi. Enough time, enough distance. And then, the strangest thing. He deleted files from his phone and laptop, wiped his call history, attempted to clean out emails, and then claimed he didn't know how it happened. It was like he thought he could delete a person the same way. But Nancy's memory wouldn't go so easily. Her friends rallied. Her family pushed for justice. Her daughters, too young to understand, were caught in the storm of something irreversible. A loss that couldn't be repaired. And all the while, Brad sat quietly, hands folded, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the floor, like he was waiting for the truth to catch up. And soon, it would. By the time summer faded into fall, the whispers had turned into voices. Loud, clear, and unified. Brad Cooper had done something, and the town wanted justice. Nancy's funeral came and went. A sea of people gathered. Family, friends, neighbors, even strangers. Mourning a life stolen too soon. Her daughters, too young to understand why their mother wasn't coming home, clutched tiny flowers and photos while the world around them blurred. But Brad wasn't crying. He stood apart from the crowd, no visible grief, no warmth. Just a blankness, as if he were watching a scene that didn't involve him, as if this were all someone else's tragedy. Behind the scenes, detectives had already built their timeline. Their theory was chilling in its simplicity. Brad had waited for the right moment. Early morning, before anyone was awake, before the town stirred, before eyes could catch him. They believed he strangled Nancy inside their home, quietly, brutally, and then, after the children were still asleep, he placed her body in his car, drove out to a remote site, and dumped her near the storm drain. He returned like nothing had happened, cleaned up, prepared breakfast, and then, hours later, casually mentioned that Nancy had gone for a jog. It was planned, it was cold, and it was evil. But to prove it, that would take more than gut instinct. The tech evidence was the key. Forensic teams dug deeper into Brad's laptop. The infamous Google Maps search was the smoking gun. It showed that he had looked up the exact wooded location 2 days before Nancy's disappearance. The same precise location where her body was dumped. It wasn't just a coincidence, it was a blueprint. He claimed the computer had been hacked, that someone planted it to frame him. But cyber experts testified that the image came from his account, his device, his session, and his time zone. Then came the 911 call. Brad didn't call until more than 6 hours after Nancy allegedly left for her jog. 6 hours, no check-ins, no panic, no frantic search. When he did finally call, his voice was neutral, like someone reporting a broken appliance, not a missing wife. The operator asked basic questions. Brad answered them flatly. No emotion, no urgency, just calm, too calm. When questioned about the delay, Brad said he thought she was just out longer than usual. But her friends? They were worried from the moment she missed the planned outing that morning. It was they who pushed the search. They who called friends. They who sounded the alarm. Brad? He waited, almost like he was giving himself time. Time to clean, time to hide, time to prepare. The prosecution took all of it. Every email, every map search, every deleted file, and stacked it brick by brick. But the defense? They had their own narrative. They claimed Brad was an awkward man, not emotional, not good with grief. They said the marriage was troubled, yes, but not violent. They painted Nancy as temperamental, difficult, even unstable at times. They questioned the tech evidence, tried to raise doubt about its reliability. And for a moment, just a moment, it worked. The jury hesitated because without a confession, without DNA, without a witness, everything came down to circumstantial weight. Could they be sure? Could they truly say beyond all doubt that Brad Cooper killed his wife? That uncertainty nearly fractured the case. But then came the chilling detail that shook the courtroom. The strangulation marks on Nancy's neck weren't random. They showed signs of a sustained, forceful grip. Not just enough to kill, but to dominate, control, hold her down as she fought for her life. And Brad Cooper was the only one who could have done that. No break-in, no struggle in the house, no signs of an outside attacker, just silence, followed by death. And now the verdict was approaching. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed back in. Every footstep echoed, every breath held. On one side sat Nancy's family, their hands clenched, their eyes red. On the other, Brad Cooper, expressionless, unmoved, as if he were just another spectator. He didn't look at the jury. He didn't look at anyone. 12 people, strangers to him, but now they held his future in their hands. The judge asked for the verdict. A pause, then, clear and steady. We find the defendant, Bradley Cooper, guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps echoed across the room. Nancy's family wept, not out of victory, but because justice had finally caught up to a man who thought he could outsmart grief, silence, and truth. Brad didn't flinch, not when the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, not when the sentence was read, not when he was led away to a life behind concrete walls. He walked out just as he had walked in, cold, distant, hollow. But outside that courtroom, the world hadn't forgotten. Friends kept her photo on their desks, in their wallets, on their walls, because Nancy's story wasn't just a murder. It was a warning about control masked as love, about marriages that look perfect on the outside while they rot behind closed doors, about how evil doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles in family photos. Sometimes it's sleeping in the room beside yours. Brad Cooper appealed the conviction, of course. His lawyers claimed errors in the trial. In 2014, years after the original verdict, an appellate court shockingly overturned the conviction, claiming that some digital evidence had been mishandled. And just like that, the man convicted of killing his wife walked free, temporarily because the state wasn't done. A new trial was ordered. This time, prosecutors offered Brad a deal, a plea. Brad took it. In 2016, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, avoiding a second trial, and was sentenced to 12 to 15 years in prison. No longer the accused, now, officially, a murderer. He finally admitted it, at least in legal terms, but he never spoke a word of remorse, never explained why, never apologized to Nancy's family, never acknowledged the daughters he left motherless. Nancy's parents took custody of the girls. They raised them in Canada, away from the place that took their daughter, away from the memories, away from the shadow of Brad Cooper. And yet, the shadow never really disappeared. To this day, people in Cary still remember her, the woman who ran every morning, the mother who smiled with her children, the friend who finally said, "Enough," in a marriage that felt like a cage. She didn't live to see her freedom, but she lit a path for others. Nancy's death exposed the quiet danger that can grow behind locked doors, the kind no one wants to believe is real, The kind that smiles at neighbors, waves from the driveway, helps carry groceries inside, and then takes a life in silence. It taught us that evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes